Is your debt causing you sleepless nights? Knock your debt out with Debt KO. And your debt won't be the only thing keeping you up at night. Debt KO, free impartial advice on all your debt.
This is UMAR AHMED for IFL TV in association with MTK Global. A dramatic weekend of boxing, Adam. A great performance from Teofimo Lopez. We'll come on to that in a second. But let's start with, unfortunately, a bit of a negative in the Ritz and Vasquez scorecards, and especially a photo we saw circulate around where it seems like Terry O'Connor was on his phone during the fight. Let's start with the actual scorecards. What did you think of them?
Well, I thought Miguel Vasquez won the fight. I think we made that pretty clear in our interpretation in the commentary. Matt Macklin had it wide. I think he had it at 118, 110. You could have given Ritson a couple more rounds maybe, but in my opinion, there's no way that Miguel Vasquez shouldn't have walked or flown back to Mexico with a good win. I thought he boxed really well. I thought, it's not the most exciting style. He's on the back foot, but I thought that his work rate was good. I thought that, some of the shots, Ritson took on the elbows and the gloves, but overall, I thought his work rate was better. He landed many more punches than Ritson, and he flowed through the fight. As I said, one or two of the rounds are pretty tight, but the majority of them were Vasquez rounds, and I just thought he won the fight, and I thought he won it quite clearly. I think that it wasn't really actually. I thought from Matt's point of view, it was a fairly comfortable and easy fight to score. I thought it was, and having spoken to a lot of people since, most people felt that, it was very wide, and whatever, however many rounds you give Ritson, you've got to give Vasquez more. So, in my opinion, there's no question that Miguel Vasquez should have won the fight. Did Ritson try? Was he competitive? Yeah, all the way through. He sort of pushed forward. He just wasn't doing enough. I think he sort of treated it a little bit more like a spar, maybe with the quiet surroundings. But I think he just had problems with the style. We saw it with Patera, and I think we saw it with Miguel Vasquez. That and for me, it was very disappointing that Miguel Vasquez didn't get the decision. I mean, coming into the scorecards, 1-3 to Vasquez is fair enough. Again, I thought it was wider, but that's fair enough. But then the other two towards Ritson, I just don't agree with. And Terry O'Connor's card of 117, 111, I thought was way out. And I think most people did as well. It's subjective. We always say it. It is in the hands of the judges, and that's what the fighters have to accept, and we all do. Matt's cards aren't official. Everyone's scoring their cards at home. But to see the sort of shock on Tony Belly's face and speak to a lot of people that I respect in the trade, your Adam Booths, your Dave Caldwells, people who read fights very well, they all felt Vasquez won it, comfortably and wide. And for me, it was a bad decision. Now, you look at the picture of the phone. I don't know. I haven't, was it a quick glance at a phone? Was it a phone? Was he writing something on it? I don't know. That's not for us to speculate or to judge. That's up to Robert Smith and the board to get to the bottom of that. Now, Robert Smith was obviously pretty straight to the point afterwards. There would be an investigation. We want to get to to see what it was. Obviously, you've got to hear from Terry's side and see what he said. A bad card, a bad night at the office. This guy has been in boxing a long time. He's a nice guy, Terry. He's obviously spent, I think he's refereed over 1,500 fights, something like that. Some of his cards have been, put up for scrutiny before, for questioning before, as have others. Sometimes, you see it very differently to other people. So, I think it's up to the board to sort of look at it and decide what they're going to do. I've heard people say, he should definitely be struck off, etc. Well, I think they've got to look at it, and they've got to find out, more importantly, why he scored it like that, and what he was doing if he was, on a phone and not looking at the action. What on earth that was about? Was it a split second? Was it a mistake? Was it, or was he writing something down? I don't know. I don't know enough about that side. That's between them. But I think what I think is important is that judges should, be reviewed, and they should sit down with the board and explain, if there is a decision like this, how they got to that. Because, you're talking about a fighter that came over from Mexico. He was a big underdog. Lewis Ritson was meant to come through this. The timing was meant to be right. But you know what? Vasquez put a great performance in. He was upset that he lost to O'Hara Davis a while ago. that was much closer than Saturday night. You know, Saturday night for me was a fairly easy one to score. I was very surprised that Neil Bannon, very established trainer, and Lewis said at the end, you know, that, or certainly Neil said, I didn't give him many rounds, and you know, there was no real urgency in the corner. They obviously thought that they were fairly in control, but for me, you know, you don't score just coming forward, and he didn't land enough, and Vasquez did. So for me, it was a Vasquez win, and yeah, it did leave a sort of bitter pill in the mouth. It was a difficult one, but as I said, Umar, you know, these are subjective. You know, I mean, Teofimo Lopez beat Lomachenko, no doubt about it in my mind. Did he win on Julie Lederman's card by that big a difference? You know, some of those cards are so strange to read, but it is subjective. That's why you have 3 judges. And, you know, all our sort of faith, and certainly the fighters' faith, is in those 3 judges. I didn't agree with the decision. As I said, I thought Vasquez won. You know, can Ritson come back from it? Of course, it was just a bad night for him with a difficult style. That's all. It wasn't a punishing defeat or anything like that. It shouldn't even really interrupt or interfere his career. But for Miguel Vasquez, you know, that was he was very hard done by what happened on Saturday night.
Mm. You're right about the incident. Perhaps on the phone, whatever it was, we don't know what's going on in Terry O'Connor's life, etc. But even if I think the point people are making, even if he was writing a simple note down on his phone, even about the fight, for example, the fact that he could get a text through that could be an emergency, a personal problem, and he's still in the fight, scoring a fight where people's health and careers on the line, and that's something that distracts him. That's the worrying, alarming point, I suppose, Adam.
Well, what it is, absolutely. As I said, we don't know. You know, was it? I think it was in the 8th round. Was it a split second? Did he do it again? I don't know. I'm like you. I haven't seen the tapes or whatever, and it's not our business. This is a board. You know, Terry O'Connor works for the British board. You know, the British board have, you know, a great record over the years of health and safety, which was very important on Saturday night with the ambulances taking, you know, a couple of fighters to hospital. We had a massive gap, and that was difficult from a TV scheduling point of view. But absolutely, the most important thing is the health and safety, and the board's record is phenomenal on that. They do everything they can, and you know, they've had huge amounts of excellent judges, referees over the past, and it's a very difficult job. You know, you look at the amount of stick that Howard Foster took back in the Froch Groves 1, you know, fight in Manchester, and you know, and people, you know, attacking his personal life. That's bang out of order. You know, if you make a decision and a mistake, then, or whatever, whether it was a mistake or not, that was his call. He's got to make that call. He's got a lot of pressure on them, and you know what? They got another fight out of it, and they all made a lot of money, and actually, all's well that ends well on that. But Howard was I know had a lot of problems, you know, personal problems with you know, people for a long time after that, and that's just terrible. You know, they're doing their job, and you know, I've always found Terry O'Connor a very pleasant guy, very friendly, very happy. I'm sure he takes his job extraordinarily seriously over a number of years, and I hope that's the case. You know, people are digging stuff out and said he was the one that refereed the McDermott Fury fight. You know, he was the one that scored for Callum Smith so wide against John Ryder. You know, but you can look at all of that. We all make mistakes. You make mistakes. I make mistakes. Eddie makes mistakes. We all do, and you know, we learn from that, and we get better and better. And was it a really bad day in the office for him, or was there, you know, was he not watching something? You know, that's all for Robert Smith to interview him, to talk to him about it. I mean, he's obviously a good working employee for Robert, you know, as they all are, and he's got to look at the case and say, but absolutely, you know, if he's not watching the fight, or if he's scoring is way out compared to what most people think, and I said it is subjective, but you're not going to find many people that thought Lewis Ritson won that fight. So I think when it's this much of a controversy, and it's this much of a decision that seems to be so lopsided, I think, you know, you have to sort of look at it and maybe have Terry explain, or whoever it is, explain sort of how they got to that. And if they say, look, you know, I was scoring for this or that, then that's a committee or the board's decision about what to do with it. But you know, it's very worrying, because the fighters are putting everything on the line. You know, we're all sort of in their mercy in many ways. They're the ones that are entertaining us. They're the ones that are, you know, getting into that ring. They're the ones that I have more respect for than anyone else in the business, and they're the ones that we need. And it's you know, and on a night where there was some really good stories, there was upsets, there was, you know, really good matches. There was, some fantastic action and great professional debut from Ellie Scott. And so much good stuff to talk about. It's such a shame that, again, the spotlight's on boxing for the sort of wrong reasons, and that sort of why did this happen, and what's going on with this, which is a shame because it was a great night. And if I saw Terry a few hours before back at the hotel, and the referees, and they always have a bit of a joke with us, the judges, what are you going to, how are you going to see things tonight? And it's all sort of loose banter. It's fine. And Terry was like, take care, keep healthy, keep safe. Really lovely guy. So it's very hard to sort of say, right, get him struck off, throw the book at him. It's a disgrace. He's a disgrace. Very difficult, Umar, to say that when the guy has given so much of his time and life to working for the board and to trying to get, to referee and judge these fights to the best of his ability. Now, if you look at other fights and that he's been involved in, and Robert might do that and say, well, look, you got that one very different to how I saw it or whatever. I don't know how Robert Smith saw the fight himself. So that's up to them. That's very much a board decision. That's why we have a governing body. That's why we listen to them. That's why when they say we can fight during what's happened, this lockdown and this terrible pandemic, we listen to them, we abide by their rules, and we go with what they say. Now we have to go with what they say in this. And it may be that Terry O'Connor, gets a slap on the wrist. It may be that they go further with that. They may say, look, these are the reasons of why it happened. I don't know. I'm sure we'll hear from them in the coming days. I'm sure there will, as Robert said, be an investigation. But that's just for us now to hope that the right thing comes out, and they get to a decision which is fair. And as far as Miguel Vasquez goes, at least he knows that most of the world thought that he won the fight, and I'm sure he'll get plenty of work on the back of it. As I said before, it doesn't matter. Lewis Ritson lost. I mean, it's a fight. He lost. He lost to Patera. Does it mean he can't come back? He's 27 years old. He goes back and he'll fight, and I'm sure they'll match him against somebody that's more suited to him next time. Someone who stands in front of him. That great win over Robbie Davis Jr. And he's a great story, Lewis Ritson, and a great guy. And I wonder if when he watches the tape back, he'll understand and he'll see it a bit differently, because when you're in there, I'm sure it's very, very different. And you think maybe you're doing better than others thought. But for me, it was a clear win for Miguel Vasquez. And, I'm not going to sit here and say, Umar, that this and that should happen. That's not for us. That's for the governing body. But I've read what Maurizio Suleiman said. I've read what promoters Lou DiBella, and obviously Eddie is Lewis Ritson's promoter, and he came out straight away and saying Miguel Vasquez deserves the fight. And he said, if that's a phone, then Terry O'Connor should be dealt with. And look, that's up to the board, and it'll be very interesting to see what happens. But I will, put that flip side on that, a couple of days later now, Terry O'Connor has done this for a very, very long time. It's a tough job, as it was all of them, with Marcus and with Ian John Lewis and with Michael Alexander and with, all of the Howard Foster, all of the referees and judges we have, Steve Gray, so many of them, Victor Loughlin, a lot of them have had very difficult situations to be involved in, when fighters have got hurt or fights have been stopped, so-called prematurely, or, judges' cards are not, as some people agree. It's really tough. There's a great deal of pressure on them, and Terry, for me, has always been a very nice guy and a very genuine guy. So I think the first thing they've got to do is get to the bottom of what actually happened on Saturday, with his scoring, which needs to be looked at, and secondly, whether that was a phone and what was going on. And as you said, if it was an emergency and it was something that was, life-threatening to his family or something, we don't know. And if that's the case, then maybe there is a reason for it, but maybe he picked something up and put it straight down again, or maybe he was distracted and on it for longer, and then that is obviously much more serious. So we'll see. It's one to wait and see what the board do, but it was unsatisfactory, wasn't it? And Miguel Vasquez, I really felt for him, and it's just a shame when these sort of things happen, that most people's opinion, the wrong guy won. But look, it is subjective. It's very subjective. There were 3 judges there at ringside, and one other had it as well to Ritson. So they're watching something slightly different to what we are. And Matt and I, at the moment, we're not on that ring canvas. I keep saying to people that we're commentating from sort of 10, 12 meters back. We're actually separated as well, Matt and I, with the social distancing. So it's not like normal. It's not like the 2 of us, 3 of us are around ringside. You're feeling it. You're looking at the judges. You're sort of getting a sense here. It is different when you're back there. But seeing as a lot of other people had that different sort of space and were sitting back, and Tony Bellew was very near us in studio and right back, and he could not believe what he saw with the decision. So I think it's one that I'm afraid was a bad one on Saturday night.
Yeah, no, we always have contentious decisions and arguments, and generally it seems like there's an array of views on the fight. But for this one, everyone in terms of who works in the sport, all fans, yourself and Matt, the promoters, etc., Eddie, Frank Smith, saw Vasquez clearly winning. The only people really were Ritson's corner, the two of the judges, and also DAZN had Ritson up.
Yeah, I don't get it. I don't understand it. We've covered boxing for many, many years. Matt is an extremely good analyst, commentator, was obviously a fighter. And, as I said, I mentioned the guys like Adam Booth and Dave Colwell and trainers that, I really respect. And often we score the same sort of way. I mean, it's not really for me to score, it's for Matt to score. He's the fighter that's been in there. I'm the one that sort of, it describes the action, pushes it along. But, you get a sense, don't you? And round after round, I got the sense that Miguel Vasquez was in control. And, as Matt has said, some of them might be landing on arms and gloves, not all of them. A fair few got through. And, if we'd seen punch stats, for example, from that, I think that would have told a clear story. I was sort of slightly surprised that Miguel Vasquez wasn't, more celebratory at the end. He was pretty down. And, we saw that a bit with Delphine Bassoon against Katie Taylor, which I thought, Katie deserved that, but it was another really close, well, that was a close fight. That wasn't a wider one, but it was one where, Delphine Bassoon had put everything in. And again, at the end, she said, look, no, the better woman won, Katie won that, etc. And it was like, okay, all right, well, that's a sort of strange one, because I thought she would be more at that moment, more sort of, happy with her performance, etc. This was obviously, in our opinion, a lot wider. But I was then very surprised that Miguel Vasquez didn't celebrate. But maybe, I think he had a 3-3 record in his last 6. Maybe he's got, he felt he should have beaten Ahara Davis. Maybe he's got a point in his career where, he takes these money fights, he keeps, this is for his family. And, ultimately he maybe didn't expect to get a decision on points in the UK, which is really bad, because, we've got, as I said, a great board and a great set of officials. And if you go somewhere and you feel, and I know that there's always been that sort of, the Nevada judges at times over the years, people have sort of, speculated and looked at and thought, how did they get to those cards? But it's something we certainly don't want to be, have that reputation in the UK. I think it's an excellent board and they're excellent officials. And I think that it's, it's a shame that when the spotlight's put on us, and that's why Robert's got to act very quickly on this one. As you said, there's maybe 6 people, a few more Ritson fans that thought that, he'd have won it. But I heard a lot of talk from Ritson fans who said, look, come on, he's our boy, but he didn't win that fight. And that's right. And I'm sure Lewis is a great guy. And I'm sure that, he'll look back at it this week and think, maybe I got lucky there, but it's not his fault. The judges are there. They gave him the win. He goes back to the drawing board with Neil and they come again. And, and Vasquez is 33. He's had his time as a world champion. Is that performance that's going to get him another crack at the world title? Probably not. But, it's not about that. It's about, these are 12 rounds. And, one fighter clearly, in our opinion, won the fight and didn't get the decision. And one of the cards goes against him by 6 rounds. And that is just, I can't get my head around that, Umar. As much as I look back at the fight, whatever, I can't. And for me, that is for the board to take up and get Terry's explanation, and also find out what the that picture was all about. Because pictures don't often tell us everything today. As I said, that there could have been something serious going on in his life, or we don't know. But as I said, he seemed pretty happy earlier in the day. He's a genuine guy. I'm very disappointed. I'm disappointed in the whole situation, and I'm fascinated to see how they'll do with it.
Yeah, you raised the point now. You concerned the UK might get this reputation that Germany, Russia, you mentioned Vegas as well, has about unfair scoring?
Look, again, it's not for us to really speculate. We're broadcasters. We cover the fight. We try and entertain the fans by putting on the best possible shows we can, with all the features and the fights and all of that sort of stuff. That's what we're concentrating on. It's not up to us to judge fights. I've always said that and we've talked many times about this sort of stuff, Matt's card or Jim Watt's card or Carl Froch's card, whoever's commentating, their card are unofficial. Okay, and it's not for us. It's for the judges. They're the 3 judges, and that's why we have them. In the old days, as we talked about the Fury McDermott one, that was the referee's decision. And I remember a few of those where I'm just thinking, whoa, that was a really strange one. And the referee, then it was deemed, okay, he has a huge job to do in the ring, concentrating on the fight the whole time. Maybe you should have 2 other judges or 3 judges separate to the referee to mark it. And I think that was the right decision. They looked at it and made a change. Maybe it's they look at this and make a change and say, right, anything that is, obviously that sort of controversial, we have to have an inquiry. We have to sort of, get the judges to sit down round by round and explain what they saw. And maybe, if they've made a mistake, they put their hands up and say, I got that one badly wrong. And then they get a warning or they get whatever. And then, or maybe they look at it again and they say, no, this is how I scored it. And then they have an investigation or a committee meeting or whatever you want to call it. They have to have some sort of, review of it, I think, when it's like this. It's funny, you can't win sometimes. We've talked about, the fact that some people feel that we're biased to matchroom fighters or biased to sort of fighters that we think should win or want to win or all that sort of stuff. It's a load of rubbish, and Saturday night is just absolute proof. Is Lewis Ritson a matchroom fighter? Yes. Is Lewis Ritson a fighter that sells lots of tickets, puts on great shows, it's exciting to watch? Yes, of course, all of that. Is he a fighter that we thought won the fight on Saturday night? Absolutely, 100% categorically no. That's nothing against Lewis. That's not biased against or for or back or anything like that. Miguel Vasquez and Lewis Ritson have a fight. We call it as we see it. And what we think is not what matters. It's what the judges think. But this is how we feel it. And as I always say at home, how are you seeing things? How are the judges seeing it? Matt, that's how you're seeing it. But it might not be how everyone else is. But that's another thing. That how can we be in any way biased when Matt's scoring a fight to Miguel Vasquez, who has no real sort of pull to us? He's not a matchroom fighter. He's a fighter that is just, that's what we call what we see, UMAR. And I think that's really important. But as I say, our cards or Matt's card are sort of irrelevant. I mean, they're a guide. They're what Matt thinks, and he's an extraordinarily good judge and a very, very good co-commentator, and as was Jim Watt and many others in the past. They worked very, very hard at a very, very difficult job, and their neck's on the lines. And sometimes, you have to walk into the dressing room afterwards and say, and they look at you and say, how did he score it like that? And well, I did. And, you've got to take that on the chin, and you've got to sort of, you've got to be honest to yourself. And that's that's the spotlight on Matt. But Matt's card doesn't matter. The judges' cards matter. So ultimately, whatever Matt says, whatever Carl says, whatever Tony says, whatever Johnny Nelson says, all of our guys, doesn't really matter. That's their opinion. What matters is the 3 judges. And in my opinion, the right result on Saturday night would have been Miguel Vasquez winning on points. However wide you score it, whether it's 7, 8, 9, 3, 4, whatever, he won the fight. So I was disappointed by that. But, it's one of those things. And so long as, Miguel Vasquez knows that that's what people thought, he gets another opportunity, and I'm sure Eddie will try and make that happen. Lewis Ritson goes on, and maybe he gets a different type of style in front of him next time, and I'm sure he's got plenty more in the tank at 27. It wasn't, as I said, damaging defeat. It was just a 12-round fight, which I believe should have gone the other way. And so hopefully we can learn from this. But most importantly, the board can, and they can learn to sort of how they're going to adapt to these sort of decisions. And when they sort of get round their own and protect, their very experienced officials and referees, which obviously they will try and do, but they'll have to have an internal investigation when something like this happens. And maybe, as I say, there'll be more reviews into, scoring or whatever, or maybe they'll turn around and say, look, our guys got it right. And it's one for them to sort out, but it was so wide off the mark and it was so different, and the 3 of them actually were so different that it's one that you've certainly got to look at.
Adam, I know you've got to go, so just a quick comment on Teofimo Lopez.
No, I don't want to be. It shouldn't be a quick comment. Let's talk about Teofimo Lopez. It was
23 undisputed at 23 within 16 fights, just insane.
I've said to all sorts of people who've asked me over the past few weeks, why we didn't get that fight, and I think I've explained that well enough now. We wanted that fight. We can't have every sweet in the jar. We have a business and we have contracts, and Matchroom's our contract, and we've got to concentrate on what we're doing here at the moment. It's very difficult. Would I have loved to have had that fight? Of course I would have done. Did I watch every minute of it? Of course I did. It was, it was a fight that beforehand I thought Loma would win. I think that maybe none of us I'd followed Lopez a bit in the amateurs, and obviously I'd known what he was about as a pro. Great win over Commie, and he's obviously very powerful, very exciting, very extravagant with the dad and everything. But I didn't think he could outbox Lomachenko. I really didn't. And listen, there was a lot of ways of looking at it. I think that he's a big, strong lightweight. I think that power probably just crept through in those early rounds and might have made Loma a bit more circumspect. That's a possibility, but I thought he boxed so well early on, Lopez. Loma was too slow getting started, but maybe the guy was just too big and strong and sharp on the night for him. A lot younger, a lot fresher. I thought that he just had a mountain to climb Loma by halfway, and he did win rounds, and I don't agree with one of the scorecards in that. I thought it was closer, but there's no question he won by 3-4 rounds. I mean, Lopez won the fight. I think it was a fantastic sort of breakthrough moment. It was something that, okay, some people felt in the Lopez camp, everyone said it was a cracking fight, but most people thought that Lomachenko would sort of box his way home here. I mean, I think there's a number of ways you look at it. Lomachenko started too slow. Lomachenko was hurt, maybe, or certainly felt something early on that just made him withdraw a bit. And maybe he was hoping the second half he could take over with that ring savvy and the experience. He certainly came through, and won a few of those rounds sort of later on. But I thought Lopez finished strongly as well. And, so he put the icing on the cake. I thought it was a fantastic performance. You thought if he won, maybe he'd have to stop him, like he said, within 6 rounds. But you know what? He outclassed him, and that's amazing to say with Lomachenko. And it is on one night. It's not, would he do that again and again over, if they had a rematch and another one, maybe not. But I think it tells you that Lomachenko has got to go down in weight. That really he's better off doing that, and also probably look at himself and think, I know he was disappointed with the result, but he probably felt by the end of the fight he was more in control, or certainly having his successes. But he gave too much away, and you've got to take your hats off to Teofimo Lopez. It was a wonderful performance. It was a fantastic win. It was a win that, that family had worked so hard for. And look, he's young. He's the youngest guy, I think, ever to unify with the 4 belts. I mean, it's a fantastic story. It's new blood. It's a superstar born straight away. You think, oh my God, I want to get him in with Devin Haney. I want to, will he go up? He's already talking about going up in weight. Him against Josh Taylor over here. Your mind boggles with things. But don't forget Loma. Come on, Loma was pound for pound king, or certainly pound for pound, 1, 2, or 3 in people's books before this. He was brilliant against Luke Campbell. Campbell would have become a world champion that night against any other person probably. He was brilliant himself, but Loma a level above, and having the pleasure of sort of commentating on very close up. The guy is a genius, and I think what he did was he took that away from him. He didn't allow that to happen, Lopez. And you've got to give him enormous credit for that. But, Loma will come back. He's a proud guy. I think he probably should drop down and take that one on the chin. But he'll come back, and I'm sure he'll win terrific fights again as long as he wants to. He's that good. He was that good an amateur. But he is, he's getting a little older now. And, there was you can look at it as a slight passing of the torch. I think Loma's better than that. And I think, he had a bad night at the office. But you've got to give Teofimo Lopez so much credit. It's fantastic. And it's great for boxing, isn't it? That division is so hot. We all said Luke Campbell should become a world champion. He's now got Ryan Garcia. He's got this fella. He's got Devin Haney. It's mad around. It's say again.
Gervonta Davis is in there, obviously.
Gervonta Davis, there's so much around that weight class, isn't there? Gervonta Davis and Leo Santa Cruz is a huge fight. And, you're getting up at super lightweight or welterweight. Those 3 weight divisions are just so packed, and almost anyone can fight anyone because, the weight divisions are small. The margins are small. You can go up, you can go down. It's very, very tough in those weights, but it makes it so exciting for the fans. So I, for one, welcome it. I think it's a terrific performance. It's a fantastic win for him and his team, and it's another shot in the arm for boxing. It's great. You put these fights on, and you put these blockbusters on, and people think, okay, this guy's definitely going to win in Loma or whatever, and there's a bit of an upset, and there's it was quite a night on Saturday, wasn't it, on both sides of the pond. It was a great show in Peterborough. Never mind what we were talking about with the main event. It was a great show. It was some fantastic stories. It was boxing back despite the crowd. And then despite the crowd over in America, you got that phenomenal win. And it just makes you sad that the fans can't enjoy this, there in the arenas. But, let's hope, in the weeks and months to come, we get that back, because it's not the same. But what we are providing the fans, I think, is real entertainment, quality matches at various different levels. We've got Usyk Chisora and the whole of that to look forward to in a couple of weeks. You've got Povetkin White rematch. You've got the Katie Taylor night with all the women out. It's fantastic. And then you've got Dubois and Joyce on BT. You think Tyson Fury's coming back on the 5th. Billy Joe Saunders will be out before the end of the year. We've got now announced AJ and Karat Pulev hopefully at the O2 with fans. If not, certainly at the O2 in the Lions Den. It's a pretty good lineup. We just got to fingers crossed and hope that everybody stays healthy. We hope that doesn't sort of happen regularly, week in, week out. Now what we need is everybody to hopefully stay healthy and safe, and these big fights to happen. But boxing's being talked about, which has got to be good, and we all know it's often for good and bad things. That's the sport we work in. It's never dull. There's always something going on. But I do think it's important that that we admire the fighters through all of this, that they're the ones that have come back from lockdown. They're the ones that are eager to please. They get in there. Ryland Charlton, what a great story on Saturday night, taking his opportunity. Lopez at much bigger level, at top elite level, taking his opportunity. And I think that's fantastic. And, it's there's a lot of debate about what's been going on, but, it's we just take our hats off to the fighters. And, whatever happened on Saturday night in Peterborough, Lewis Ritson and Miguel Vasquez are not to blame. They both fought 12 hard rounds, and they put what they could into it. And you at this stage, let's thank the fighters for continuing to put on great shows and great performances, and maybe in many ways ignoring the crowd and going in there and doing it for them and their families, and retaining their focus. So yeah, it's there's a lot of good stuff, as well as the one or two things we're debating and talking about this Monday morning.
Just a quick one before you go. Of course, Eddie announces US shows. So Jacob Rosado, Haney Gambo. I'm actually not sure. Are they picked up on Sky? Has that been announced yet, Adam?
No, not at all. We look at everything. We've got our budget. We've got there's no right or wrong for us to say we're taking Matchroom USA shows. Obviously there are production costs there. There's a lot of money that needs to be paid out for all of these various shows, and we've got a contract with Matchroom. That's our contract for UK shows, and Eddie and I talk and we work out on a sort of week by week basis what we feel is right. We've also got a lot of scheduling issues, Umar. The fact that we didn't have live sport for 3 months, and we always talk about boxing, but I like to say, look, we've got a huge portfolio of sport led by the Premier League, with the cricket, with the golf, with the Formula One, with and a lot of American sports, NFL and stuff, which is overnight. So we've got a lot of scheduling to fit in. It's not always that we can get these fights scheduled. So we look at that. We look at what time they are. We look at who's on the bill. Obviously, if there's British interest, we look obviously at Brooke Crawford and things like that. If we can get these fights, we will. But we have to look at our shows between sort of 7 and 11 on a Saturday night at the moment. That's the most important thing. Huge amounts of work going in at the minute behind the scenes, operational, lot of difficulties with what's happening with the pandemic. There's a pandemic going on around the world. That's what we have to adhere to. That's what we have to keep everybody as healthy and safe as we can. That includes our staff, that's Matchroom staff, that's the fighters. That's our main concern at the moment. So, we look at everything, and it's often, and we've got budgets, and we've got a lot of issues as well at the minute too, obviously, with what happened with the pandemic, especially during the lockdown time when sport wasn't on. There's huge amounts of sort of rights to fulfill and to look at, and a lot of financial restraints and constraints. And as I said, we cannot have all these fights. We cannot have every sweet in the jar. So we look at it, and we've got a golden contract, to finish. Those finals coming up in December. We had the World Boxing Super Series that we managed to work out and negotiate and get on. And we've got a huge amounts of Sky Sports shows and Sky box office events at that key time for us, at the UK time at sort of 9, 10 o'clock at night, which is so important. So yeah, look, in an ideal world, UMAR, I'd take everything. But we have to pick and choose a bit more carefully now. And Matthew and I work together, and we work, and Eddie and I talk every day about sort of what we feel is right for the UK audience. And that takes a lot of things into consideration. That's finances, that's scheduling, that's other sports. And sort of also what sort of audiences we get at 4 a.m. But would I have loved to have had Loma and Lopez? Of course I would have done. Would I love to have Devon Haney on? Of course I would. But, sometimes, you've got to look at other things. We have a business to run, and sometimes things aren't possible. But there'll be other times ahead. And as I said, we look at different outlets and the way we can try and get some of these international shows on. But the priority at the moment is the UK, and that's what we've got to look at.
No, yeah, it's the same conversation we've had about the Brooke Crawfords, the Loma Lopez. I know the others, but just because those are Matchroom shows, I know they're Matchroom USA, but the Haney and Jacob show, I just wondered whether there'd be slightly more interest just because they're Matchroom shows.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, absolutely. But I mean, if we're saying Brooke and Crawford is more interesting for a British audience than, Danny Jacobs or Devon Haney, maybe because, we've followed Kell Brook for a long time. That's something that I'd like to do if the finances work out. But no, I understand your point. We are, in a wonderful relationship with Matchroom and have been for many, many years. And I think that's this year is actually, we've grown even closer if that was possible. I mean, I started at Sky in 1994 when John Wischusen and Barry were involved. It was really just John Wischusen at that point doing the boxing. Eddie was a kid at the time, we've had a long relationship. Obviously, we've had the snooker, the pool, the darts, the ping pong, the fishing, everything that Barry's turned his hand to, and very successfully. Especially see the darts that have come through, and Eddie and I and Barney Francis and everybody on the teams have worked extraordinarily hard to bring boxing back to a new level between 2012 and today. So, we're very, very in line with Matchroom. And I think the work we've done with Fight Camp, with the fact that we've worked together on those sort of innovative shows, all of the work now we do, the bubble, the complications behind the scenes, the amazing amount of work that everybody on the Sky boxing team does, 24/7 to try and get the best out digitally, socially, on linear. And on Matchroom, they're a fantastic team, and they've got, it's really busy. They've got another Matchroom USA team who are dealing with what's over there. But obviously, in our relationship, we'd love to have everything, but sometimes that's just not possible, and we need to choose and select carefully so that our viewers, maybe the football fans, can watch a big game and then they tune into the boxing. That's important for us to get a lot of eyeballs on the sport. And at 4 o'clock in the morning, we know that is trade hardcore fans. So, we have to think about that carefully. I love doing the international fights personally. I think it's really important. And I think, but again, we can't travel at the minute. So there's no way we can go and sort of, put a bit of sparkle on the shows out there, take our teams out, etc. And there are budgets. So for all these things, we have to look carefully. But we look carefully on a daily basis. And it's ever changing. Araceli VS and I talk all the time from the PBC. I talk to Todd DeBerth. They're desperate for us to do their shows as well on Sky. They realise the platform. And we look at every single case. Would I have loved to have done the Charlo brothers? Would I have loved to have done Gervonta Davis and Santa Cruz coming up? Of course. But, we have got Derek Chisora and Alexander Usyk at 10 o'clock at night. That's where our priority is and should be. But, it's it'll only be a matter of time before we get some really, wider international fights back. But, let's just take what we can at the moment. As I said, throughout this, the fight is the most important. The fight is getting up and fighting and providing that they stay healthy and they stay safe and away from the virus. That's the most important thing. We're getting those shows on at a time where it's really difficult to get anything on operationally. So I'm hoping that will continue through Christmas, and we'll have a fantastic boxing calendar, a fantastic boxing schedule. They will over on BT as well. They will on ESPN and DAZN and Top Rank. And we've got, huge PBC fights, a massive Showtime, right? I've got a huge schedule as well. It's great. It's great that we've
we've all been dealt the same cards. Ultimately, there's not as much money because of the gates. The gates are not non-existent. It's very hard to put on these big fights, as we saw with Fury and Wilder. We've managed to get White Povetkin. We're going to get another one. We've got Usyk Chisora, AJ Pulev. They've got Tyson Fury coming back in the ring. They've got Dubois Joyce. Hello. Happy days, surely, for fight fans. And that's what we've got to remember. These matches are being made, and it is really difficult for the individual promoters, the broadcasters, for everybody. We're all in this together, and we're all doing the best we can, Umar.
I mean, Ryan Garcia, Luke Campbell, Errol Spence, Danny Garcia, these are a couple of fights we haven't even mentioned. And there's so much at the end of the year, actually. Yeah.
Brilliant fight, absolutely brilliant. Errol Spence against Danny Garcia, as you said. And what a fight Ryan Garcia and Luke Campbell is. It's a brilliant fight, and in a phenomenal division, as we've talked about already. And we followed Luke all the way through. It will be really difficult for us if we can't show that fight. But as I said, we have to look at everything. Same with Kell Brook. How many great Kell Brook nights have we had? Win or lose, he's been such a great part of Sky Sports. And but we can't have everything. I wanted to do Amir Khan and Kell Brook for so many years, and that never seems, and as much as I talk to Amir and talk to Kell and whatever, it seems that fight, like the Hatton-Witter, like the Lewis Bowe scenarios, is destined never to happen, which is such a shame, because I think we could have had 2 or 3 of those, and I think everybody would have done very well out of it. The fighters would have been, financially so secure. The fans at that time, when we were talking about it before lockdown, etc., the years gone by, would have had so many fans at those things. We could have done, one at the MEN, one at Bolton, maybe one even at Wembley. Who knows? If they've been great fights, and it's a shame. We got that with Froch Groves. We got that to double act. It's a shame it never happened with Brook and Khan. But, are we still interested in Amir Khan and Kell Brook? Of course we are. We followed their careers, and they're giving us so much excitement. They're the ones, Umar, that are getting in and putting their health on the line every time in the ring. They are the ones, And I want to finish this with just saying a massive congratulations to Kane Baker. I mean, there is a guy that is, as he says, he's a fight fan with gloves on, right? He gets in. He doesn't get his first fight against Fiaz because Fiaz pulls out, quite rightly, for health reasons. He gets in again. He gives it everything. He's not quite good enough. Fiaz, lovely, beautiful boxing, beats him. Does that stop Kane Baker trying to get back? No. Do answers another, almost more emotional than Teofimo Lopez. Isn't that great that guy is at a level? We're never going to say he's going to be a world beater, or even maybe he'll never win a British title. But you know what? It's fantastic to see. He's answered the call. He's the bubble wrap. It's a great story. It's a feel-good story. How many defeats he's got on his record? He can go back home, and he says whenever they have an argument in the house, the missus puts him on losing. Well, now he can put him on winning. And that's great. It's just fantastic that he takes his opportunities, and he's an example, and so is Ryland Charlton, an example that if you take that risk, if you just roll the dice a bit, it can work out. Lopez did it. He called out Loma at that level, at the elite level, and he got what he wanted, and he delivered. Well done to them all. Fantastic.
On that note, Adam Smith, thank you very much for talking to IFL TV, and have a good week, all right?
Cheers, Umar. Take care, mate.
Thank you.
Is your debt causing you sleepless nights? Knock your debt out with Debt KO. And your debt won't be the only thing keeping you up at night. Debt KO, free impartial advice on all your debt.